Lauren Elise Rogers is a certified holistic sexuality educator and certified embodied intimacy and relationship coach, and the heart behind Sex Ed for You. With warmth, precision, and a deep well of compassion, she creates space where people feel safe to explore their desires, dismantle shame, and build a more conscious relationship with sex and self. Clients describe her as someone who makes the complex feel manageable, whether she's untangling sexual myths or guiding people towards relational empowerment. Lauren's work is rooted in equity, embodiment, and truth-telling, an antidote to the confusion and discomfort so many carry from our early sexual conditioning. Through online platforms and coaching practice, she's reimagining what sex ed can be, and it can be tender, liberating, and deeply human. Gosh, you've done a lot. Thank you so much for joining. You're incredibly kind.
Thank you.
And in the brief chat we've had before we start, I already know that I'm going to learn a huge amount from you. And I would recommend everybody, after listening to this, to go and look at your website, listen to your podcast, because it's fabulously informative. And you come across very clearly as somebody that wants to make a difference in a positive way, which I think is wonderful, really. So my first question really has to be, how did you end up here today? So what's the journey from Lauren as the teen all the way through to Lauren as the embodied spirit you are today?
What a question. What a rich question. And I so agree that it must be the place we start, because while I hear a bio like that, I always sit and think, ooh, this has not always been me. I grew up inside of conservative religious spaces. I was given zero sexuality education. I didn't even attend public school, where there is minimal to no sexuality education, but I was homeschooled, and so there was none to speak of. And I was raised with this very clear understanding that sex was to be between one man and one woman inside a marriage, and that was going to be great sex. I say this in big quotation marks because I was never really explained what that would be. And it was to primarily be for the purpose of procreation, the purpose of having children, being fruitful and multiplying. I understood that you could, inside of a marriage, aspire to loving, sweet connection. And I was always told that when it was in God-ordained confines, it would be marvelous, but I was never told how it would be marvelous. I was just told that the Bible itself contained everything you needed to know. So, the night before my wedding, my mother, who has since passed away, told me, Lauren, take care of your husband's needs and everything else will be fine. That is the single piece of sexuality understanding I was given. Well, fast forward over a decade, I find myself divorced, I find myself alone, and I find myself discovering for the first time that my ex-husband is now gay. So, as any listener could understand, I spent over a decade inside of a marriage in which I was trying to quote unquote fulfill my husband's needs, and that was never going to happen. I was not what he was desirous of. You and I were saying before we even started recording that desire seems so seldomly to be included inside of sexual education of any kind. So I found myself alone, and then also puzzled with, well, wait a second. If I'm no longer a virgin, am I a whore? The only two understandings that I had been given for female sexuality was the woman who is a virgin on her wedding night and then is a satisfied sexual being inside of marriage. But then that any woman outside of divorcee is a whore. She wore this scarlet letter. She was a temptress, a seductress, a danger to communities. And so I really, really began to sit with, well, who am I truly as a sexual being? And is it possible that I missed some things? Is it possible that I didn't truly have an understanding of myself, my needs, wants, and desires? And could that have altered the outcomes of my previous marriage? And so it was there, Andrew, on this basement floor, alone, destitute, having lost everything, that I began to really dig into this idea of sensuality, sexuality, pleasure, desire. And I just began to gobble up books. And it was then that friends started to look at me differently and say, you seem different. What are you reading? What's happening? Who are you becoming? And so I just couldn't hold it in. I began teaching and sharing, and I felt like I was exploding with knowledge and information that I had never been given. But it got to a point where folks were asking questions that I didn't have the answers to. And I thought, I wonder if there's a program out there. I wonder if they teach people how to teach this, because I love what I'm learning. And sure enough, I found a program for certified holistic sexuality education. And I thought at that time that I would just take what I was learning and apply it to the field that I was in then, which was maternal health. I spent a decade working with people inside of pregnant and postpartum bodies. But it wasn't until I was maybe even 6 months into school that I said, if I had had this information, it would have changed my life. And I think that with my passions and my drive and my love of building businesses, that just perhaps this is my next venture, that this is the thing I am called to do, to take my pain into a purpose, that I am called to hang up a shingle and create a business called Sex Ed for you, for every person individually and uniquely, and that quite possibly this is the information that could heal the world. So I opened my business in January 2022, and the rest is history. I now work with individuals, as you said so beautifully, all around the world to reclaim and re-access what was always theirs to begin with, and to help them flourish, whether individually or partnered. And it has become my greatest passion to not ascribe one cookie cutter solution to every human being. I think that's silliness. I think we are all so unique, and to help us understand where these beliefs even came from and who we truly aspire to be, that aligns with our values and our ethics, because I truly believe that sexuality can be life-giving and joyous and juicy and delicious and led with pleasure. And yeah, I wouldn't change a thing, but I haven't always been this way.
Wow. I wouldn't have guessed at most of that. So what would the 14-year-old Lauren think of that Lauren you was today? Would she recognize you?
No. It's so interesting that you say that. Yesterday, I had a massage and a coaching session of my own, and both my massage therapist and my personal coach asked me about 14-year-old Lauren. This has goosebumps all over me. And so I've been sitting with 14-year-old Lauren. 14-year-old Lauren really was bought into this idea that my primary purpose in life was to be a wife and a mother. And that women, I didn't know that women had a clitoris. I didn't know that pleasure was, I had the capacity for this. I did not know that this was something that could guide me. I thought that being a wife and a mother was the most beautiful thing I could aspire to. And I think the 14-year-old version would be disgusted, quite sadly, would be amazed by maybe the notoriety, because I was an actor then, and so had dreams of being a performer and having applause and those types of things. So might be a little amazed at that, but she would be so confused because she had been told that only boys masturbated, that only men looked at porn, that women were temptresses and seductresses, and that my primary role was to keep boys from stumbling. I would have been very afraid. That's what I would have been, afraid of the women I am now.
So did you have any intimate moments, understanding of sexuality before your marriage?
No. And someone asked this just the other day of, I didn't discover self-pleasure, a self-stimulation, masturbatory practice until 8 years into my marriage, when it had been 6 months since my husband last touched me. He was dealing with alcoholism and parasomnias and all of this other horrible stuff because he had suppressed his true orientation, we now know. But I was desperate for love and attention and affection, and was so convinced I was about to have an affair because I was so hungry for any form of romantic attention that's when I taught myself how to bring pleasure to myself. But no, before then, I mean, I had felt arousal in romantic movies and maybe
Mhm.
erotic movies, but no, had never looked at any form of erotic material online, had never read anything erotic, had truly believed there's this verse in the Song of Solomon in the Christian scriptures that says, do not awaken desires before it is time or something. And I had just clung to it and truly told myself that everything was going to be great inside of marriage. And it was not. It was not.
What? Why? And it's a very difficult question. Why do you think, to some extent, society and most religions create that notion that, in their mind, being overly sexual is something to feel shame about? And as a part two, can the shame we felt as teenagers, young adults, middle-aged adults, can that shame ever be completely dissolved, or do we just live with it?
Oh, such good questions. These are my favorite questions because you're going to get to see my inner nerd right now.
Awesome.
So, I did a deep dive on this question of what was it that they were truly afraid of?
Mm.
Why were we shaming the body so deeply? Why was sexuality the one thing that we were pushing into the shadows? And what I came to find was this true attention to dualism, and that Plato, way back in time, and the church fathers at the Council of Nicaea had truly tried to give us this rhetoric that the body was deceitful and the mind was the thing that we should be developing. That women were the gateway to the devil, is a quote straight from Tertullian, and that women should be ashamed at the very notion of being female. And we were doing this in a very patriarchal time, as most of us knew existed in, the founding of Earth and civilization in this space. And this just became embedded theology alongside of what we now have as the Christian scriptures. If you were to dive deeply into the Christian scriptures, you wouldn't see a lot of sexual shame. You would see actually a lot of freedom and life and celebration. Again, if you read Song of Solomon, it's some spicy content. It really is. And yet, we truly subscribed to Plato's idea of dualism, which again is that the body is not to be trusted, but the mind is to be pure and sanctified and all of these types of things. And so we bought into this heavily, as well as this idea that men were the primary person and women were second to men, and that was truly how God intended, which again was embedded theology, not truly, I don't believe, what was intended in the Christian scriptures. So what we did is begin to develop this more deeply and more deeply. Then our buddy Freud came along, and Freud really led us to think that anything outside of sex that was being enjoyed between one person and another in that sexual container, anything outside of that, fantasies, behaviors that were a little more risque. He began to pathologize all of these things and began to truly make us believe that unless we were having deep enjoyment right here with the person in front of us, we are in some way sexually flawed. So again, we attached to this narrative, even though it has been disproven again and again, and we just let this go along over time. Then what we saw happen is this idea of reaction formation. So, when a young person is being brought up inside of the church or inside of simply a curriculum that is teaching abstinence only until marriage education, okay, which is a byproduct of this same idea that marriage is the best place for sex and that we're going to scare you away from having anything other than sex inside of marriage, when we are teaching this incomplete and inaccurate understanding of sexual functioning, we are in so many ways withholding necessary information for young people to be making fully informed decisions about their sexual behaviors. So what is happening is that while they're coming up in primary school, secondary school, they're growing, they're becoming, they're growing, they're becoming, they are forming, their sexuality by contrary is not. It is slowing down. It's being pushed into the shadows. It is reaction formation. It is forming over here. So we are applauding the grade A student, but we are not talking about sex and bodies and the bodies of others. We are applauding your performance. We are applauding your athletic abilities, but we're not talking about sex. And so what young people start to do is internalize, as you so beautifully put it, shame. They start to think, wait, why can we talk about my football technique? Why can we talk about my math score? But we don't talk about how I want to go and kiss my boyfriend during lunch. We don't talk about the awakening sensations in my body. We don't talk about the prevalence of pornography everywhere we look. We don't talk about my desire and interest and excitability. We don't talk about how to start, continue, and end relationships. So these must be shameful. And so what we have seen is that, again, whether or not you were raised like me in these religiously restrictive areas, or you were just raised without a complete and accurate understanding of sexuality, sex is shrouded in shame. So the second part of your question, so juicy, can one ever begin to eradicate themselves, get themselves out of these types of old beliefs that no longer help them? I believe yes. And that is what I spend all day, every day doing, is helping my clients locate the origin of certain sex negative, pleasure negative, body negative beliefs that I like to say were planted in their metaphorical garden without their consent. And we look at who planted this. Do you align with them any longer? Do you ascribe to their value system? Was this truly the intent of what you heard at that time? Or is that a 14-year-old understanding? And do we need to grow that up a little bit? Because for so many people, the only sex ed they ever did get was in middle school, we would say over here in States, or in high school. And it's not enough. It's not enough to know how to put a condom on a cucumber. That is not the extent of what sexuality truly encompasses. And so, yes, I deeply believe that we can weed shame out of our metaphorical gardens, yet it takes time and attention. There was this beautiful study done in the UK. They went to this small community and they looked at individuals in their 60s and 70s, and they asked them these sexual flourishing questions. And regardless of partnered status, regardless of frequency of sex, the human beings who were thriving from a place of sexual self-efficacy and sexual flourishing, those humans shared one thing in common. They had done work at some point in their lives, usually around 30 years old, 30 to 40, to understand the things they had been taught about their own bodies, about sex with other people, about eroticism. And they had come to a decision for themselves of what they truly believed now. That was the one thing that all of the humans that were flourishing, again, whether they were partnered, whether they were going into the local gay pub once a month and having a sweet little moment and then going home and being so thankful, all of these humans, regardless of frequency or partnered status, were thriving simply because no one else but themselves was governing what they believed about their own bodies and the bodies of others.
And I was saying before we kicked off, so I've got a 15-year-old son and an 18-year-old daughter. So my daughter, it's a little bit unusual. So my daughter is studying philosophy and psychology, which is going on to do at college hopefully in the fall. And so she'll come home and tell me about Plato or about this or about that, but this and it, and she'll have that discussion with her brother and my son. I think my son got his sort of first serious 15 girlfriend early this year, and I'd much rather he have the information and the knowledge to make decisions with his girlfriend, and that she has the knowledge to make decisions with him, rather than, I don't know, watching porn or talking to his friend or seeing something on TikTok or whatever. I'd much rather, because knowledge is, I mean, it's a very overused phrase, but knowledge is power. So yes. I think but historically, governments, societies, religions have kept knowledge to themselves in the hope of disempowering the people, if you like.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the big challenges. And I was just thinking before when you were talking about it, I mean, and obviously I've never experienced this, but particularly as a woman, you hear the words vixen or temptress or she-devil all the way through to whore or slut, and there's not a male equivalent. There's not a male vixen or a male tempter. He's a real tempter, he is. You just never ever hear it. Or he's a real slut. You just don't hear it. But it's that thing, I guess, going back in society where most societies were led by men, and there was that, I don't know, almost fear of letting women have that knowledge, whether it be voting or whatever it was going to be about, women, know your place kind of thing. And that's, I think we have, and I've been doing a lot of reading lately about, and I don't know what you think about this, how our bodies carry with them trauma experience from previous generations. So it's embodied
Yes.
trauma, etc. And a lot of people think, well, nonsense, but that's the whole thing about where you're talking about.
Yes.
Where our mind is one thing and our bodies aren't to be trusted, which is it seems so wrong. When I talk to somatic healers and coaches and people now, I think, well, actually the body, and I can always feel things in my body that I carry from, people passing away or traumas or things that are clear from my mind, but they're still stuck in the body. And I'm not sure what the question is there, sorry, but whether, do you feel that our bodies carry things with us from previous iterations of ourselves, or from our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents, that we need to somehow work through and understand?
Yes, no, you're hitting on so many things. And I think it is so important to do the study that you're doing right now, because I think it does two things. One, it is so validating that, yes, these things that we feel in our bodies are real and are true, and science backs it up. That maybe it is not our story, but it's our parents' story or our grandparents' story or our great-great-grandparents' story. So to validate that felt sense inside of our bodies, number one, I think it has such incredible value. But then number two, I believe that it allows us to extend curiosity, compassion, and forgiveness to the generations before us. So when we look at the research on why parents aren't having the types of conversations with their children like you are having with your 18-year-old and 15-year-old, it is because of their own discomfort with the subject matter, their own amount of embarrassment about their own lack of education. When we look at it, it's not that parents are trying to withhold from their children. That's not what it is. They're not trying to be sneaky. They are truly embarrassed. And what I think this type of work that you're doing now, of really getting curious about what might it have been that my parents didn't have these discussions with me, boy, oh boy, was it helpful for me to do this exact work, was truly enlightening. It allowed me to extend curiosity and compassion, not only to myself, but to the generations before me. Because you're right, it wasn't that long ago that entire societies only were patriarchal. It wasn't that long ago that women got the ability to have a checking account. I live in a state where divorce wasn't even legal until far too recently. Marital rape wasn't illegal.
Yeah.
I mean, these are horrifying things to learn, but I do believe that it allows us to extend curiosity and compassion. And then I loved what you were mentioning about for how long we have, as governments, kept knowledge from our people in order to keep them from power. And that reminded me of some research that I recently found, wherein when they looked at tribes around the world, communities around the world where there was zero violence, they found two things present. One, they held their babies at birth. Okay, so the babies were born and then they remained attached to both mother and father figures. The whole community just wore those babies, kept them near to them. And then number two, there was zero sexual shame. The young people were equipped to understand their bodies from the times that they were so small. There were nuptial advisors in the communities. There were sex educators that were teaching the young girls about their bodies, that were going with these young people on their wedding nights and staying until both parties had had an orgasm. I mean, it was just flowing with sexual information. But when this was discovered, the director of the NIH, I think at the time, brought it to everyone and they said, you can't talk about this. Precisely what you were saying.
Yeah,
You can't,
when the findings don't suit the
right?
the questionnaire, it's hard, isn't it? Mm.
Yes. So just
But I think with
yes.
and I look back to my grandparents, and that's one and two generations away. So they both sort of lived during the Second World War, and they they were no more likely to talk to their children, my parents, about sex as they would be to talk to them about nuclear physics, because they just
Right.
didn't have the words or understanding, and they just knew nuclear physics. That's like a nuclear bomb, isn't it? Sex, that's just like, yeah, we do that, husband and wife, we do it occasionally, and that's it. And sex is penetration.
Yes.
That's where I think that's where I really would love society to move towards, is to almost forget about the word
Yes.
sex and replace it with the word pleasure, because I think
Yes.
because sex or pleasure could be brushing your hair or stroking your neck or kissing your ears or just looking at you. That can be incredibly intimate and sexual and erotic and pleasurable. But we have that program in our head about, okay, so marriage, sex, penis and vagina, ejaculation, go to sleep. Okay, right, I understand that, good. When we if you think about it as pleasure instead, I think it takes away a lot of the pressure. I mean, what am I now? So mid-50s. Sometimes I find it hard to get an erection and stay hard.
Yes.
But I think,
Yes.
okay, so I can't have sex now. Okay, and I go to bed pissed off, and my wife's she's annoyed as well. But rather than thinking, well, let's just hold each other, let's just talk to each other, let's just whatever. We can have an amazing, pleasurable experience without
Yes.
my penis having to be hard to get into your vagina, and that's sorry.
Yes. No,
I'm
no,
feeling
don't be sorry. These are the
the
conversations that must be
pleasure is
happening.
a big thing. I
Yeah.
think that we shy away from, and that I think is very much a religious thing. That it's
Yes.
primarily it's procreation, so
Yes.
pleasure is almost
Mm-hmm.
a dirty byproduct.
Yes. And it's so interesting. I love the way you painted all these things together. The grandparents, the current experience in your body. We've been talking about your son and the serious girlfriend. And yes, if we were to broaden our definition of
Mm.
sex, right? My current definition is sex is the language of my body oriented towards pleasure. That's it. So if we were to expand this definition, well, then, yeah, we wouldn't be rushing so quickly to thrusting a penis inside of a vagina, which is immensely pleasurable for the person with the penis, but it's not always the most pleasurable thing for a person with a vulva and a vagina. It's just not. And so what if we could broaden this understanding and, yes, start to lean into all of these pleasurable things? Think of the most pleasurable things for an early romance. Some of it is just your fingers brushing together for the first time,
Yeah.
right? Some of it is that whisper in the ear.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that pleasure is through the roof. And what's so interesting that we see inside of long-term partnerships is exactly what you were so beautifully saying does not need to happen. But yes, it's the only form of touch, connection, pleasure that we are allowing ourselves to experience is penetrative sex, a penis and a vagina. And we are longing for that other stuff that truly makes relationships magical. They are such a source of untold pleasure if we would allow ourselves to experience it.
And all the research and statistics sort of suggests that, or states very clearly that 80% of women find it hard to orgasm
Yes.
through penetration. But when asked the same question, 80% of men know that their partner orgasms through penetration. I'm sure there's a mismatch there somewhere along the way.
Right? That math just doesn't match.
Yeah, it's not really. Yeah.
No, it doesn't work.
Every man thinks that they're doing the right thing, but and I think we although obviously foreplay is incredibly important, I think the challenge is that we call it foreplay
Yes.
before the main event. So
Yes.
I'll have a starter, I'll have some garlic bread, then I'll have the main event. It's almost that, but foreplay, playing and pleasure, that can be the whole thing. That can be as amazing as anything else, and better in lots of ways. It doesn't need to be, okay, let's do this. I'll do this for 2 minutes. You do that for 5 minutes, and then we'll get down to what we're here for. And then I'll ejaculate as a man, and I'll check my phone and I'll fall asleep. And it's like, oh my God, that
I know.
feels like I don't want my children to have that as their intimate experiences throughout life, because they'd be sad. There's so many things to understand and explore. And it's not about having 1,000 partners or having sex swinging from a trapeze, whatever. It's not. It's just about feeling comfortable. And you talk about embodiment, and I wonder what embodiment feels like on a good day. And is that a result of understanding intimacy and understanding your own relationship with sensuality?
Such a good question. And I like that we're bringing this in this angle, because what I was going to start to say is the ability to have these types of conversations and sit in this space, this pleasurable space, and have these types of conversations with intimate partners is a superpower. We were talking earlier, right, that knowledge is power, right? And this ability to sit in slight discomfort, even maybe, the curiosity, the unknown, I would argue is a superpower, not just power. It's a superpower. And yes, I do think this takes a certain amount of embodiment. And what I mean by that is, you were saying earlier, I can feel in my body. And I made a little mental note of, oh, this is a man who can notice his own embodied experience when he is sitting with in a conversation with someone, whether he is sitting with new information that is incoming. I was reading some very sad research the other day that was saying between the ages of about 4 and 7 years old is when most young men start to lose their own ability to trust their understanding of another's emotions and or their own embodied experience in the presence of another because of this. They see their mother sad, and they come up to their mother and they say, "Mommy, what's wrong?" And she says, "Oh, nothing, honey. Nothing. You don't need to worry about Mommy." And in those reinforced moments where a little boy, who I deeply believe is intuitive and embodied and can feel their mother's sadness and joy and all of these things, we have now taught this little person not to trust their own embodied understanding of another. And so, yes, 80% of men say, "Oh yes, my partner comes from more from penetration." Look at this, right? They're not able to read, no, this is not a true orgasm. She may be faking it right here. This might not actually be the most pleasurable thing. And they also might not have the agility with which, this emotional agility, to sit in a curious, maybe slightly uncomfortable conversation with her to say, "Tell me about pleasure. Tell me about your pleasure. Tell me about something you would love us to try." Because that creates a sense of a little bit of anxiety of, what if I can't do this thing? What if I need to be coached? What if she tells me something that another partner taught her? And what if I have to deal with my own feelings of lack or ineptitude? There's a lot of things that we have to sit with. And I think that that level of embodiment, the ability to be in oneself in the presence of another, is a tremendous skill. And it takes some work. It takes some deconditioning. It takes listening to oneself. And that feels like a catchphrase that a lot of us use. Oh, listen to yourself. Well, what does that mean? For me, it took a lot of slowing down. It took doing things like taking myself on a walk with no technology and letting my fingers run along a brick wall, and then letting my fingers touch the tree as I walked by. And then letting my ears really hone into one thing that I could hear. What did it feel like to draw my attention to just one sound? And then what did it feel like to notice my breath? And then what did it feel like to notice if I experienced anxiety if I walked by a certain person? Or what did it feel like to enjoy someone's eyes on my body? What did it look like to come home to myself and to feel my own feelings? Then, after I got more acquainted with that, I took it to the next level and then would start to notice my body in conversations with another. And for me, it looked like, was I ever experiencing that cotton mouth type of feeling where all my saliva would go away, or anxiety in my stomach? Was I experiencing a dysregulated stomach? Was I experiencing tension? Well, then what happened if I asserted my voice? Did I even feel I could? And then what happened if I distanced myself from that human being? Oh, well, then I took it to another level and I started to look at workplaces. And then it took it to another level of, wait a second, what if my body does know? And what if these felt senses that I've been silencing for so long have truth to them? And maybe, just maybe, it's not only my felt sense. Maybe it's my mother's and my grandmother's and my great-great-grandmother's as well. And what if I can honor not only me, but all of them by starting to make choices that come from me, that are my truest truth? I tell my clients all the time that when we can start to be people of true integrity, that understand that they have wants to put forward, that it is not another's job to provide us with the thing that we want, but it is 100% our responsibility to be able to vocalize those wants and put them forward for another. So then another human being can decide whether or not they're interested in playing with us in that way, experiencing that thing with us. But if we do that very human thing of, oh, no, this isn't about me. You go. You tell me what you want. Mm-hmm. Oh, no. Yes, I'm happy to do that. Oh, yes, I'll do this and I'll do that and I'll do this and I'll do that. Instead of, let me think about that. Thank you for the opportunity. Let me consider it. That slow down, that pause, I call it a sacred pause. To consider, is this my truest want? Am I okay with, again, sitting in my own body and acknowledging that saying no or saying not right now, maybe later, might make another uncomfortable, but might be honoring and be my actual deepest truth, which actually might be a more honorable thing to put forward to another. And so when I talk about embodiment, again, to wrap this whole thing up, I mean all of it, just as you were saying with sex and pleasure, that it's everything. And when we can understand that sex is not everything, but it is a part of everything, I think the world truly starts to open for us. Because when we can understand that at all times in sex, someone is giving a gift and someone is receiving a gift. And then when we can understand that, oh, that applies to everything. That applies to this conversation you and I are having now. It applies to the way I make breakfast for my 14-year-old. It applies to my friendships. It applies to everything. And that, I deeply believe, this sense of embodiment and making choices from a place of embodied existence, I believe it can heal the world.
You explained that so beautifully, and I so two things of that. One's a comment and one's a question, I guess. And I very much resisted that for a long time, thinking that all the decisions I had to make had to come from my brain, from my rational side or whatever. And then I read something that really helped me, and it sort of explained that, well, when people talk about gut feel or feelings and somehow being less valid, actually, what a gut feeling as a feeling is exactly as you put it, and I'll put it far worse now. It's the embodiment of every micro experience you've had, your ancestors have had, everything you've seen, you've heard, you've tasted, you've whatever. That is your gut feeling or feeling. So making decisions from that place makes far more sense than this sort of like rationally on a spreadsheet. What should I do? And when I read that, and I never really thought of it as being about embodiment. That really helped me think, well, actually, no, I'm really going to go with and listen out for my feelings. And I find it much more enjoyable and empowering now to have a conversation with somebody, be on my own, and actually really listen to those feelings and be aware of the feeling in my gut, in my shoulders, in my neck, wherever when I'm engaged with somebody. So that was my statement. And the question was going to be, I think a lot of people, I think, in relationships, whether it could be 6 months, could be 30 years, you meet each other, you fall for each other, you have sex, you pleasure, you have sex, and you think, unless you're quite exploratory and very open and very conversational with each other, you can tend to get sort of stuck in that's what we do. And then 6 months, 25 years later, you think, oh, actually, I really like to be submissive to my partner. Sometimes I really like to be tied up. I'd really like to role play or whatever. But I think we in our heads, when we get in our heads, we think, oh, gosh, but if I say that, are they going to think I'm weird or a pervert, or they're going to sort of laugh at me? And I think it's how when you meet people and you have the discussion with them, it's almost not how to have the conversation. It's almost how to create the space for a discussion that actually, like you say, well, okay, right, I heard what you said. I'm going to think about that, or I'm not going to react now and say, oh my God, I can't imagine. Why do you want to be submissive, or why do you want to spank me, or whatever? I think, yeah, you don't want somebody to react. So how do you help people create that space? Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And you took words out of my mouth. It makes so much sense that you shared something that I was going to share, which is what I encourage is to think less about the conversation and more about the space for the conversation.
Yeah.
That so many of us spend our entire relationship trying to keep the other comfortable. And that is not love, that is attachment. We have this deep desire to remain attached, and that's beautiful. That is primal within us. And I am never going to shame it. And yet, I am going to call you out, individual, on this fear of bringing up a subject that might be temporarily uncomfortable for the sake of maintaining comfort, which enables you to remain attached. I was just hearing about this concept of structural trust, right? This untested trust versus resilient trust inside of long-term partnership, right? So we have so many structures for relationship that we have given to young people, right? Your boyfriend and girlfriend, then your fiance, you're engaged, and then you are married. And these are structures that we have created through a compulsively monogamous society. And we have said, this is best. This is what you should do. And what that has done is created an untested trust in all of these young folks who are entering into partnership. And then, oh my goodness, the longer we get into partnership, right, the longer this relationship is, the riskier it can become. It can feel so risky inside of these long-term partnerships to bring up talks like this. And yet, what science shows is that resilient trust is even stronger. Trust that we are testing, that we are feeling into. So how I would encourage someone in a short-term relationship or long-term relationship to approach these conversations is what you said, is what does it look like to make sex, and I mean the broadest sense, a third thing? So what does it look like together to create spaces for conversations like the one you and I are having today? And what does it look like to say, hey, let's both pick a podcast on sexual communication and let's send it to each other. And then our fun assignment is you listen to the one I send you, I listen to the one you send me, we take some notes, and then we talk about things that surprised us, that intrigued us, that scared us, that made us a little bit interested. And we come and we have a conversation. This isn't about something that we're going to do. This is about connection. This is about creating an atmosphere and a space to play, converse, and eradicate shame. There are so many things that we all desire inside of sexual encounters. And what's interesting is that research shows that women are actually the more adventurous and risky inside of sexual containers. They've just been so told by culture that they have a low libido and that men want more sex. And so when we create a space, a safe space to start having these conversations, again, that don't require any changed behavior yet. None. These are purely conversations. And when the goal is not to change another's behavior, when the goal is connection, well, then we can start practicing asking curious questions. So when you have this fictitious conversation with your partner about the podcast that you listen to, and they share with you a couple things that surprised them, maybe titillated them, maybe scared them, I invite the responding partner not to answer with a statement, but to answer with another question. Oh, I'm curious. You said that this really titillated you. Can you tell me more about that? Why? Or, oh my goodness, I had never thought that that was going to be the thing that so interested you. Can you tell me more about that? Or, you shared that made you feel fear in your body. Can you tell me where? Can you tell me something that would make that seem less fearful for you? I'd love to know about that. I often say that curiosity is the key to intimacy. As human beings, I think we have this deep desire to be known, to be seen, to be valued. And conversations like these that are about sex as this broad, beautiful thing allow us to be curious to another, allow us to be seen, allow us to evolve and change and grow. And there's this fascinating thing that happens when we learn something new. It creates chaos in our brains, which allows us to create a new neural pathway. And so when two brave individuals create a space for curious conversations like these, whether or not they know it, they are creating a new neural pathway together into something unknown, which creates greater intimacy and creates greater possibility for deeper, richer, more joyous sex.
I hope everybody's going to have one of those conversations. Sounds incredibly powerful. So what I'm going to say now might sound a bit old, but I think one of the mistakes we make is to try to please our partner all the time. And by that, I'm not even thinking sexually. I'm thinking, your partner might say to you, where do you want to go for dinner tonight? I don't mind. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go on holiday this year? I don't mind. Where do you want to go? And you think you're giving the choice back to them, but sometimes it's so amazing. You say to your partner, where do you want to go for dinner tonight? I really want to try the Italian. Brilliant. It's such a different... You think you're pleasing them by not taking the decision. We think we're mollifying them by giving it back to them, but it's sort of, it can be exhausting. And I think that's probably the same with pleasure. It's like, well, I do this because I think you like this, and I don't do this, I think you don't like it. So you're assuming what somebody else feels and what somebody else feels in a particular moment, because there are times when something feels wonderful, times when it doesn't. There are situations, there are locations, there are times, there are weather conditions, there are anything that can affect how you're feeling about something. But we take this upon ourselves to interpret what somebody else might be thinking at a particular time. That's really hard. We're not mind readers. So just rather than just, doing what gives you pleasure, because that's what's going to give the person the most pleasure, knowing that you're getting pleasures is how I see it. It's a very weird thing that was, as humans, animals don't do this.
No.
They seek pleasure and take pleasure. And that's, I'm not saying we should take pleasure, but you know what I mean? It's that we don't, you don't get in your head about, oh my goodness, but last time we didn't like this, or just like, oh, she doesn't. We watched this film though, and he sort of smiled, or then he pulled away. Oh my goodness, your head's going to explode. Just go into something looking for your pleasure, and that's what's going to get people pleasure, I think.
So beautiful. No, I couldn't agree more. And I just want to tack on that I think by trying to mind read continuously, we are doing this wild thing, which is robbing another human being of their own agency to tell us what it is that they truly want. And when I consider that, boy, oh boy, do I slam on the brakes of the mind reading train. It is actually not okay to continually try to mind read. Yeah. We are projecting onto another what we think to be true about them. But you're exactly right. It could have been the weather. It could have been a certain thing they were craving in the moment. It could have been anything. It could have been old. They could have outgrown something that they used to like. It's fine. It's actually beautiful. It actually develops what we love to say in my industry is erotic friction. Right? This idea of you being in your agency and me being in mine, and us being able to observe one another at an observational distance while celebrating each other's differences actually creates greater amounts of pleasure, because I'm able to look at you as another, and I'm able to know that I am me. What we do when we start to do this, just deferring to the other, oh, I don't know, you choose. Well, over time, we, inside of long-term partnership especially, tend to have one person who eventually just is the one who asserts the ideas for where we go to dinner and what type of sex we should have, and the other one is constantly deferring. And wouldn't you know what happens? Both parties end up feeling resentful. One party ends up feeling like the other never desires, right, them, or to go out, or to do this. And the other one ends up feeling like their ideas, opinions, yada, yada, don't matter. And so what I would love to say to anyone is then just cut it out. It's going to be really uncomfortable in the beginning. Sure, oh sure. If you have developed this pattern of one person asserts all the ideas, initiates the sex, these types of patterns, while the other one just defers. But there is a way to say, you know what? I have a domain. And that is a box around me. And it is everything that I have a right to and a responsibility for. It includes my values, my pleasure, my appetites, my favorite foods, all of these types of things. And you, the other, also have your own domain, which is everything you have a right to and a responsibility for. And interestingly enough, every aspect of human relationship should be, in an ideal world, a negotiation of the third domain, the space between us. And so when I put forward my want for Mexican tonight, and you put forward your want for Italian, we might not both agree. But we might be able to choose the third, just our local pizza joint. Oh, okay, actually, you can get something slightly Italian, and I can get something slightly just American tonight. Great, wonderful. We have negotiated to a place of the third domain. And it becomes this lovely, equal sharing of wants, which, of course, can be replicated in the bedroom as well. And it becomes this very, very fun and playful way to exist inside a relationship with another.
How do you support clients that come to you and they might think that their desire is too much, or that their kink is, I think that only they have, and out of 8 billion people, they're the only one
Yes.
that have. Well, first, I mean, because you can't just sort of say, no, gosh, hundreds of people have that kink, and people are, I mean, because I can't imagine there's anything in the world that somebody else isn't into, if you're into it. How do you help them?
Mm-hmm. First, I would say that the number one thing I hear is, am I broken? And I think that both of those questions, right? My desire for sex is quote unquote too much is a version of, am I broken? And then the second one of, oh, is my kink, am I weird for having this desire, which is also a, am I broken question. And so I would first seek to help my clients really feel into, where did this beautiful desire come from? Where is the origin of it? And what shame are you in this beautiful body of yours holding towards yourself? Because usually this belief that we have that the amount of sex that we want is too much, or that this certain particular kink is too kinky, usually the shame is being heaped on us from some old script from somewhere. So where's it coming from? So once we can get to a place of integration, is what I call it. And the World Health Organization says that this well-being of sexuality is fundamental for individuals, families, and communities, and that sexual integration is a part of that, understanding that our desires, our level of desire, is an important thing for us to understand. And then when we can come to a place of comfortability with it and integrate it into our lives, the whole world benefits. So that would be where we'd start, is where is the shame coming from? Where is this coming from? Because in my ethic, we do not push sexuality into the shadows. It is not a ravaging beast that's going to take us over, right? There is an ability to be rational about our desires. And so, did this idea of too muchness of my desire come from these scripts that one heard that, for instance, for me, so maybe the person with my desire for sex is too much came from somewhere like me, where I was always told that men were the ones who wanted all the sex and that women would be the ones feigning headaches and saying, not tonight, honey, and all of these types of things. So I very much thought that I must be a nymphomaniac. I thought I was a crazy person. And no, I was just married to a gay man. That's all that was going on. But I truly believed that I must have some hyperactive sexual desire. So once I could go back in my story and find the fictitious roots to some of these scripts, well then, well, oh well, this is fascinating. So for the individual who says it's too much, well, I would start to look at, well, how are you defining sex? And is this desire for sex feeling like an obligation to a sex partner? How is your self-masturbatory practice? Does this need to be a beautiful expansion of what we understand sex to be? I have worked with people in male bodies who are in partnered relationships with women who deeply believe that they got married and so they should never have to ask for sex again. This should just be something that is given to them. And they are being told by their wife that this does feel like too much. And I could understand that. So then we uproot this idea. Where do they come from? Where do these scripts that a body is just supposed to be yours for the taking? Where is this rooted in? So sometimes there's kind of like an archaeological dig that has to go on for us really to get curious about the origin story of this. So then we can, like you said so brilliantly earlier, fill in the knowledge gaps. Because knowledge is power. And once we can start to understand, oh, there is nothing wrong with a beautiful, ritualistic, masturbatory practice to start your morning. How can we start to build and craft this glorious celebration of your body that your wife is not beholden to at all? And then simultaneously, can we be nurturing romance back into your relationship? Can we be nurturing curiosity? Because guess what? I bet you that wife has her own kinky desires. And I bet you that wife of yours is craving adventure and risk and doesn't care to just be put on her back on the bed and used for your pleasure every day. So, watch how we can satisfy your bodily desire. Great. It's not too much at all. But then also start to nurture the connection that you crave with your partner at the same time. So that's what I'd be doing for that one. Then for the other one, we'd really look on, again, the origin of the feeling that this specific kink is too naughty or too out there, or you're the only person. There's this wonderful book that's Why Are People Into That? And it's a whole book about the origins of kinky practices. And it's so good at eradicating shame, but also saying within an ethical framework, there are beautiful ways to explore every kink in the world. And so then I would sit with this client to really start to differentiate fantasy from reality. And I would really start to feel into the fact that 80% of human beings actually prefer fantasy over reality. That sometimes all of the work that needs to go in behind the scenes to bring a kinky fantasy into reality is not something that all humans are interested in doing. So we would really get to, how do we ethically get to sit with another human being who has a right to their own pleasure, who has a right to their own body and agency? And are you willing to put in the work to be a safe person, to go into a kink dungeon, to go into a play space, to go on an adventure in a tantra space? What do you need to prepare you, again, knowledge gap, to enter into these spaces that do exist, that are wonderful? But it's not wise or ethical to just enter into them without any undergirding, without any education. And so let's fill in these knowledge gaps. Let's also eradicate the shame around it. And then let's differentiate between fantasy and reality and decide, is this something you really want to do? And then if you're a client of mine, we're going to do it ethically. We're going to do it from a values-aligned way. We're going to learn about aftercare and the importance of nurturing the other human and yourself post-kinky experience. And there's so much that we can learn from these things if we eradicate shame and fill in the knowledge gaps.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important what you said there about fantasies and reality, because a lot of people have a particular fantasy, and there's lots of research into what fantasies people have, and I think the thing is with a fantasy, it's like being the director of your own film. It can be your fantasy is perfect.
Oh my
Everything somebody's wearing, the physique of the person, the time, that everything is perfect because it's a fantasy. And I think that's where people sometimes struggle, is that the fantasy is one thing, but reality, a lot of research shows that women and men have fantasies about being taken,
Yes.
being overawed by somebody. That might be the fantasy. So I'm
Yes.
taken by somebody breaking into the house or takes me and pins me to the bed and ravishes me, or whatever. But actually, the reality might be that they, male or female, want their partner to pin them to bed and take them, or role play it, or whatever. It's not living the fantasy isn't what people are looking for. It's like you say, the fantasy lives where it lives, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's so well constructed, and you go back to it time and time again. The reality is something that brings you pleasure in a different way, I guess. So
Yes.
I did want to. We sort of left your story at a very very particular point. You found out your husband was gay. You got divorced. Oh, okay, here we are. Now what? How was your understanding of desire and intimacy and sensuality evolved? I'm assuming it's a terrible thing to do. You're in a much better place than you were when you were in a loveless or sexless marriage. So how have you got to that place? What does being you feel like now in your pleasure seeking time?
Mm. Thank you for this question. So many people don't circle back and allow me to fill in the story from that dreary, dreary time.
I can just hear
So
everybody shouting in my ear, ask what you like now, ask what you like now. Yes.
it's much better. It's much better. So as I was doing this work on myself, I also was really sitting with what is it that I desire in this next season of my life, and what pieces. It was almost as if I was sifting through my
Mhm.
own story. Right? What pieces do I want to leave behind, and what is going to remain? And what kept coming up is I love partnership. I was like, I really desire partnership again. It's fun. I love being able to nurture another and be nurtured. And so there are journals full of me saying, oh, I crave partnership in another season of my life. And so then as I sat with that, I sat with, well, I still live in my same hometown where my ex-husband currently lives because we co-parent our beautiful, thriving 14-year-old. She was only 9 then. And so I thought, how in the world am I going to find this partner that I'm dreaming of? This partner that I'm manifesting, if you want to say that in a woo-woo way. And I thought, you know what? I'm traveling for work a lot now. Again, this is before my sexuality education business was in existence at all. And I said, what if I get on one of those apps and I put in the zip code of the place that I'm traveling to in the US? And I thought, might be crazy, but what I might do is be able to meet a gentleman with whom I could have a conversation, that this might remind me that the world is bigger than just this. It might remind me that anything is possible, and that I could meet a person on a plane, or I could meet a person who's visiting my small town. I just want to shake up the scarcity mindset piece. I just want to practice abundance. So I flew to Seattle, Washington, and I experimented in this way. I didn't meet anyone in person, but I had some lovely chats with gentlemen in Seattle, Washington. And I thought, well, that wasn't bad. And so then I was traveling to San Diego, California at the end of October 2019. And I thought, well, I'll do it again. So I put in the zip code for the area where my conference center was. And something happened with the algorithm, and it spread way too wide. And yet I was scrolling through pictures, as one does on the apps. And I had always told my best friend that if I found a man on the apps that I was supposed to be with, meet, date, flirt with, whomever, my body, back to your embodiment question, would respond. I said, I just know it. So I'm scrolling through pictures, and then all of a sudden I see this man and his piercing eyes. And my whole body, I kid you not, went, drum. And so I just liked his picture. I was almost frightened because I thought I had not intended this. My little abundance mindset practice game had not included me seeing a man that drew me in like this. So I just liked his profile to come back to later. Then I woke up a day later to a message from said gentleman who said, "Lauren, love, you're in Virginia. State your business. What are you doing liking my profile?" And so I just wrote back, "Well, I'm traveling to California for business, and I like to keep my options open," with a little winky face. And so I started into this banter. He said, "Here's my phone number. Send me a text. I'll call you." So he calls me on the phone, and we start this little dialogue. I mean, the conversation must have only been 10 minutes long. That was playful, that was curious, that was lighthearted, that was fun, and everything that I had been teaching myself and learning about embodiment, I could feel. I could feel resonance. I could feel looseness. I could feel saliva in my mouth. I could feel everything. And so at the end of the phone call, he said, I think we should go out on a date. And I said, "I do too." And he said, "I'll pick you up at your hotel when you fly in." I was flying in a day early before the conference. So I arrive at the hotel and I'm wearing all of my thickest sweaters and chunkiest shoes, and I look disheveled and I look like a mess. And I'm at the check-in counter and it's an hour before our date, and I glance across the lobby and there's this gentleman who looks very much like the man in the pictures from this app. And I text him and I say, "Is that you?" And I get no response, but I finish checking in and I turn around and there's this gentleman about 20 feet with his feet planted, staring right into my eyes. And my whole body said, "There he is. There he is." So we walked up to one another. We had a little bit of an encounter, and I said, "You're an hour early." And he said, "Traffic was light. I didn't expect to be this early." And I said, "I'd like to go up and change." And he said, "Absolutely. I'll meet you down here in an hour, like at the time of our date." And I went to put my hand on my suitcase to roll it away, and his hand was already on the suitcase. And sparks went through my entire body. And the rest is history. He ended up moving here to Virginia to be with me, and we got married in 2023. We have a home together, and he is actually the one who said at some point during our love story, "What would it look like for you to start a business around all of this that you're learning? I think you could do it. I think you could do it." So this very business that you and I are discussing today is all because of this love. So my desire now can be seen very clearly on the podcast that I have with my partner, which is literally called the Partnership Podcast. But we have absolutely made conversations about sex so constant. We have celebrated intimacy and sexuality and sexual experiencing in a level that I didn't know was possible, but we are like my test ground for anything that I'd work with clients on. I'm like, "Oh baby, I want to test out this thing." So we have a lot of games that we play. We have a lot of podcasts that we listen to. We have a lot of exercises that we try. And it is as if we exist in a constant conversation. It's things like, for instance, this morning, I wanted to get out of bed to do a journaling practice early in the morning, and that is what we call his tingle time. It's his favorite time to have sex. But in our home, a masturbatory practice is celebrated. So I brought him a cup of coffee and gave him a kiss and said, "You enjoy your masturbatory practice and tell me your fantasy that you come to later." And so he came downstairs to the kitchen, and I was journaling and sipping my coffee, and he said, "Do you want to know?" And I said, "Yes, please sit down." And so then he told me this beautiful erotic fantasy, and we got to have this moment of connection and celebration about his masturbatory practice that kept this connection going on and on in our world. And it is more than I ever could have dreamed of. It is not easy. We have been dealing with, of course, the lived experiences, the memories that are stored in my body from the trauma of my first marriage. So I don't want to paint some beautiful rose-colored glasses experience. It has come with beautiful challenges. And yet I love to tell my clients and tell every friend and human in my life that when we are wounded in relationship, we have an opportunity, if we are so brave, to be healed in relationship. And so that is the season that I am in, which is healing again and again through sex, through play, through actually being desired by my husband because he's attracted to women, and so much more from this idea of pleasure being my birthright, and for him standing behind me by saying, "Oh, pleasure's your birthright. Chase it. Chase your pleasure. Let us celebrate your pleasure." To everything, to this idea that in our relationship, it is not husband over the wife. And what does it look like to exist inside of egalitarian partnership? So yes, the Lauren that sits before you today is thriving and healing. And I love what Emily Nagoski says, which is we don't go from broken to normal to perfect. We go from healing to woundedness, healing to woundedness. And I deeply believe that each level of healing I have been able to experience both individually and then inside of relationship allow me to attend to that next level of woundedness that was hiding right behind the surface. And I don't view it any longer as some sign that I'm just going to be broken forever. I view it as a sign that my nervous system is ready for that next level of healing.
That's I could really feel that in my throat. That's very emotional. So sorry, I'm trying not to get emotional hearing it, but it's
Please.
it's really joyous to hear that. Really, gosh, I'm so glad you did that. I'm so glad let's see who's near the hotel, and we'll have a bit of banter, and then next thing you know, you're living a life. It's wow. When you work with clients, obviously clients aren't generally coming to you sort of saying, "Oh, Lauren, I just want to book an hour with you. Tell us how wonderful our life is. It's amazing." They obviously come to you at a point of reflection or difficulty or trauma, sadly in some ways. How do you? Because obviously you really want to be, and I can absolutely feel that you are completely present from them in that time. How do you protect and nourish yourself so you don't carry that trauma and negative energy with you? Or how do you look after your, I guess, mental and physical well-being?
I think this is a beautiful question because I think it was something I really had to work on prior to starting this beautiful business of my own and then as it grew. And I think that some of these tools that I now utilize, anybody could utilize, even after holding space for a friend or sitting with a grieving loved one or sitting with their own child as their child grieves their most recent breakup. That even can trigger the nervous system of a parent who wants their child not to experience any pain. Yeah. So, I do a lot of ritualistic things such as I, have a separate office. I have a separate space. And so space is very important to me. I have a big belief that movement and completing a stress response cycle is my ethical obligation. So caring for myself and making sure that I am able, before entering into these sacred spaces with my clients, that I have shored up myself, that I have gotten good sleep, that I have gotten good nourishment, that I have moved my body, because all of these things are not my client's responsibility to care for. They're mine. And so again, I would offer this to anyone who is going to go sit with a grieving loved one. Have you gotten good sleep that night before? Have you eaten before you went over? What is your self-care plan after you leave? I think so often we don't give enough credit to the lift that it takes to sit with another. And so I have, a time-bound opportunity to sit with these human beings. I do 60-minute sessions for an individual and 90-minute sessions for a partnered session. After a client leaves, especially if it has been a story where we have sat and we have cried, I cry openly with all of my clients. I am a deep crier and I am not ashamed of it. And so if I have cried, if we have sat in a story, I usually clap around my office. So this is really interesting. It changes the vibrations in this space. And so I will often clap. And what's really been sweet to me recently is I've been considering that since I grew up in musical theater, how often you would clap after a performance number and you would clap at the end of the show. And I think that clapping not only is a somatic tool that many of us use in spaces like mine, I think my body doubly understands it as a transitional exercise. Because from the age of 6 years old, I've been on stages where you clapped when the show was over. And so I go around my office clapping, and I think that any of us could do that too. And then I have some beautiful sprays. This goes back to our original conversations about embodiment. So I kind of go through the checklist of my senses, right? So I clap, I can hear that. I spray something, I can smell that. I take a sip of water, I can taste that. I roll into my body, I can feel that. Is there a space in which I had been holding tension? Usually I find that I'm mirroring whatever my sweet client is doing across from me. And so if they were carrying the tension here, I notice in my body, how am I coming back into my own soul? Sometimes I will eat food. Sometimes I will take a walk around my office. Sometimes I will jump up and down. That seems to be really good. There's some really fun breath exercises. Anyone could Google it. You like throw your hands up, you throw your hands down, and then you throw your hands around your body. And apparently you do this like 6 times and it restores your body to a state of equilibrium. And I deeply believe it. I think it really does. So just do those little practices. And then I really, really watch my time outside of sessions. As the business grew, my capacity for other things on the outside diminished. I no longer do coffee dates, can I just pick your brain coffee dates? I had to let those go. And I had to watch just where in ways that I was giving that I could no longer give because I deeply believe that this is a calling and that I am supposed to be doing, I'm supposed to be doing this right now. And so I must really be mindful of my capacities and my limits. And what I tell my clients is, my hope is that I am modeling that really clearly. So they even know that they have an open invitation to do things such as email me in between sessions. And yet I might address it with a reply, or I might save it for our next session and say, I read your email, let's talk about it. That they are openly encouraged, but that it is my job to monitor my capacity and limits. Because to go outside of that is to move into a space of martyrdom, saviorism, do-goodism, and I'm not interested in that. And so if I am to build a sustainable practice, which is my deepest desire, being mindful of my limits and capacities is my job. And so I think those are some of my favorite things that I do.
I don't think I've met anybody that is so much in the place that they're supposed to be as you are. It's so obvious that you're in the place you're meant to be in and doing the thing you're meant to be in. And I do think it is a calling. I don't think people who really genuinely are in this place that you are think, right, I need to find a job. What should I do? Yeah, I'll do this. Because there's many easy ways to earn money.
Yes, there are far easier ways. Yes.
And I can just absolutely, and I'm letting myself to do it. I really feel that you're absolutely in the right place. So my last question, actually, there's another one after this, which is a slightly cheeky one, but the last question I wanted to ask really was, so do you vision what the future will look like? Do you have here's my 5-year plan, 10-year plan, here's what success feels like, looks like?
So I am known for every time I create a 5-year plan, I complete it in like a year or 2. So it's a dangerous thing for me to create a 5-year plan. And yet with the same passion that I feel that this is the work that I am meant to do, I do feel like I am meant to tell my story and the stories of my clients and the stories of this work and the way in which it can heal in some form of book format. Absolutely. I don't know the way yet, to be completely honest. And yet I have started writing, and my clients have actually been giving beautiful feedback. They've been saying, what if you tell some of our stories as conglomerates, right? Because I can't actually tell a true client story. It's unethical. But what if you tell some of our stories in conjunction with some of your stories? And what if that also shares how to do some of this work for those whom might want to do some of this on their own? Because I deeply believe that we are all inherently able to do this work on our own. And yet having someone to link arms with, whether one-on-one and work with me or through a book, there's this beautiful term called bibliotherapy, which is the art of reading a book and utilizing it in a therapeutic way. And I read so many books that were my form of therapy, and it was life-changing. And so I truly, truly think that next up is a book that I will birth, that I will create. And I can't wait to see what it looks like, but I promise to keep you informed.
Oh, God, I'd love to. It's just, yeah. It's funny, when you were saying that, I was just visualizing being in my local Waterstones and this book just drawing me towards it and touching the book and feeling the energy of the book. So I think that's what you would embody your energy. I do feel that's when sometimes you just reach for a book and it just, my goodness. And when you open the book, you just,
Yes,
I love books. I've
I do too. I do too.
far too many, and I love the feel of them, the
Yep.
words in them, and I can, whether it's fiction, I can almost taste the words that they're using and almost devour the paragraphs, or whether it's something that's informing me, and it just again builds onto that inherent embodiment we have. Every little word, every sentence, it's amazing. So I really feel your book would be a book full of energy. So I cannot wait to read it. And then my final question was, will you come and do this again? Because I literally have another 50 questions easily I want to ask you.
Yes,
Such
I
an
would.
absolute pleasure in the every meaning of the words taught to you.
Yes,
Your partner is incredibly fortunate that you found him, and I'm sure you're incredibly fortunate to have found him. But yeah, just every word you use is just embodied with energy. It's fabulous. Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, I feel like yeah, well done for being you. It just is so. Well, from almost going from this homeschooled 14-year-old that would record in horror to who you are now. It's going through this marriage to a guy that hopefully finally has found himself and has found happiness as well. To where you are now, that's a hell of a journey, and at every single step you could have faltered or tripped, and then to make the decision to actually say, well, but my embodied calling, my design, my need is to help all these other people. That's a hell of a thing. To ever doubt that is a hell of a thing to do. So yeah, just thank you so much. I was really looking forward to this, and blew my expectations out the window. So I would love to talk to you again, maybe at the end of the summer or something. I just got yeah yeah
I would I would love it. I would
yeah.
count it
Thank
a
you so
deepest
much.
joy. I would count it as deepest joy. Not everyone asks as curious questions as you do. I even love the name of your podcast. Like there is such an inquire nature in your spirit.
It's like you said, curiosity. If you stop, I feel terrible for people that don't feel the need to learn something new every day, don't feel the need to be curious about anything. Just imagine, gosh, that must be really bad. Be curious, just pick up something different, just read a different newspaper, just watch a different TV show, just walk a different way on your way home, just eat something different, just anything to bring a little bit of, I didn't know I feel that way. It just, yeah, life is basically a series of billions of moments, really. And
Yes.
if you can make a moment might not always be good. That wouldn't be right, because the bad moments help the good moments seem even more extraordinary. So yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Gosh, sorry, I'm
No,
rambling now.
I'm loving it. I love it.
It's
I love
fabulous.
it. And maybe on the next one we can talk about some work that I did into, what is the roadblock to curiosity,
Yeah.
and it would be a neat follow up
Mhm.
because it touches on so many of the things that we've talked about today.
Yeah.
But I knew going into this work that the reason that some might come to me was because of an obstacle or a blockage to this very thing.
Yeah.
So I think a beautiful follow up conversation could be what gets in the way of curiosity? Because to me, it is the key to intimacy, and it is the key to luxurious sex and pleasure and
Yeah.
untold connection with others. And to me, that is the whole purpose of life, is to have these rich connections with across the
I think it is.
globe. And but I, yeah, would love to chat about that a little bit because I was delighted to discover some of these blockages and then to extend curiosity, haha, and compassion towards them.
That's a great tease for the next one. Thank you so much. I will let you go and enjoy your day. I'm going to sit and absorb what you said. I can't wait to come back to this. So yeah, thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me and for your curious questions.